Okay, so here we are with Giovanni, and we're going to ask a few questions just to kind of get an idea about who you are. So, hey, what's up, Giovanni?
Hey man, how you doing?
I'm all right, man. So you're an editor for the Central Page, is that correct?
Yes, sir. My name is Giovanni Colette. I'm from Ontario, Canada. I've recently joined the Fathers' Rights movement. I think it was 2 weeks ago. So I joined you guys as an editor, and it's really, by the way, it's an honor to work with you guys. I want to thank you all for the opportunity you're giving me. Um, Thanks, Sam, for hiring me and not thinking I'm a complete idiot. But yeah, man, it's a great place to work at, and it's an honor.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and I'm honored to be chatting with a dude like yourself. So we kind of talked about some questions that we want to ask, and maybe we'll keep doing things like this. Um, but just some questions to get to know the editors and, you know, see what your experience has been. Why are you here, et cetera, so forth. So I guess the first question would be, or it'd be more of a open-ended statement, but tell us about yourself, and what brought you here and why you're here or whatever you want to share.
My name is Giovanni, and I'm from Ontario, Canada. I've been married for 15 years and have recently been separated for the past year and 1 month. So just a bit over 1 year. So I've been going through a lot of what these folks on here are going through. Um, I've got two little girls, two daughters, Jade and Idian, 9 and 7, and I do some trucking for trade, uh, and a bit of anything on the side. That's where I'm in a nutshell.
Nice. What turned you on to say, "Hey, I want to be an editor," or "I want to volunteer in the Fathers' Rights movement"?
Well, I've been following the page for a few weeks there, and I was looking at all the testimonies and what you guys are doing, such as the articles, posting, and the memes, and I really wanted to try and see if I could just join the team and see what I could bring to the table, what color, what flavor, and hopefully bring some form of change, some impact to combat this war we're all in. Um, yeah, man. Ideally, if I can bring something that will make an impactful change or will help somebody out there, even if it's just one person, hey, my job is done, man.
For sure. How has that been going so far? It's only been a few weeks, but how do you feel? How do you feel about it all?
It's good. It's good. So as an editor right now, I'm involved in engagement. Um, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I mean, sometimes it's hard not to go and speak on my own, right? Because I gotta represent the movement, right? And that's very hard sometimes because I'm the kind of guy that has very different ideas. My school of thought is not common ground, you would say. So I gotta hold myself back a lot, and like not bring in my own. But I like it. So far it's great.
I find that a little challenging myself. I definitely am someone that thinks outside of the box, and I try to remain objective. And I find that challenging sometimes because we're all here for a reason. I started following TFRM years ago, and I was going through a struggle, and uh, I had strong feelings, and I had these beliefs, and yeah, it's really difficult to now be in a position where I have to try to direct the conversations, but at the same time, knowing exactly how that person feels that's commenting, that's saying those sometimes, hateful things, sometimes strong words, and it's difficult because I know that it's not positive for the movement. And at the same time, like, I know that hurt. I know what they're feeling. So it's hard. It's difficult to balance that. So I know what you mean.
You know the place where they're coming from, which is a place of hurt, right? So
Right.
yeah, that helps a lot, since us, we can sympathize with these people because that's where we come from, right?
For sure. Well, how I guess moving on, how did your situation affect you? How did going through a separation or divorce, how did that affect you? Where did that leave you?
Oh man, but it's been hell, honestly. I couldn't have imagined it to be any tougher, any worse. So I really can sympathize with a lot of these guys. Basically, I lost everything, right? I mean, short of my car, I kept my car, and like a few toys like guitar, computer, TV screen. Aside from that, man, we lived in a home for about 9 years, and I lost it all. All the investment I made in that home. I lost all the the furnitures, the properties, everything. And in a sense, like me and her, when she told me she wanted a separation, I kind of gave it to her, right? I mean, we tried to negotiate, but I saw that it wasn't getting nowhere. So basically, she was telling me like, okay, well, you start off with nothing, and I keep everything. So one thing that came to mind was like, okay, like I'm willing to do that, but in my mind, I saw the forest beyond the trees, and I understood how the the court processes and the child support, and how they kind of like chip away at your rights, and reduce you to a piece of bread. I saw this coming, so I said like, okay, well, I'll leave you everything, but all I'm asking you is, as far as child support goes, we're going to settle this between me and you, right? Me and her. I don't want the courts involved in all this thing. Don't bring them up. Let's just do this, like me and you, and we'll figure something. Because I wanted to prevent myself, from all this insane amounts, that they make people pay depending on how much they make and whatnot. And anyways, so one thing led to the other, right? And so she was then pressing, and she was like, well, you got to find yourself a place, you got to leave, you got to leave, you got to leave. And one thing added to another, and a lot of within all the stress, you know, I ended up having some charges against me, spousal assault, right? So one day I'm getting at home, she's not happy, she's bitching at me, she's in my face, she's giving me shit, and so like basically I tried to put her aside, right? I wanted to get out of that situation, so I put her aside. I sat her down on a seat behind her, and that caused more, should I say, damage than I wanted it to. Anyway, she ended up getting hurt, right? So she goes to the hospital, and report says she comes back. There's no bruise, no marks, nothing broken, no injuries or nothing. But the way it works here in Ontario, Canada, at least, is when they go to the hospital, they then call police because there's some kind of remarks being made, right, about like what happened, where did you get hurt, anyways. So police get involved, and I end up getting charged with spousal assault. And these charges are not made by that person. It's not private charges. It's made by the state, if we may, by the
Hmm.
crown, right? So I end up having, now mind you, all these charges were dropped because a lot of this was baseless and false accusations. But all this to say that now I have on my shoulders, like I have a giant, right? I have the state on my back, which is bringing allegations against me. So police, they put me outside of my home right? Because now, according to them, I'm some kind of boogeyman, and according to the report that's being written, I mistreat my family, mistreat my wife, mistreat my kid. I mean, the libel that was written, how my name was dragged to the mud. I mean, me, like, they were saying, like, I made it so my children could never go outside, that my wife, she couldn't see men. Anyways, the slander was through the roof. So I end up losing my home. I'm taken out of my children's lives. Mind you, since then I haven't been. I didn't see them. It's been a bit over a year now.
You
So
never hit her.
I
You know,
never hit her. No,
you
all
just
I
moved her
wanted,
out of the way.
exactly, all I wanted to do, I wanted to get outside of undesirable situation, and she was very aggressive, verbal in my face, and very like. I just wanted to move out of the way, and I end up having these accusations. Right now, mind you, all the responsibility, and I'm not trying to blame shift. I'm the kind of guy that's very responsible guy, and I take responsibility for my actions. And in no way at all am I trying to blame shift. But mind you, all this time they take out the responsibility of her involvement in this, and they put it all on me, right? Hey, that's how the system works. It's completely unfair, but that's how it was, right? So what this caused me to have to do in the separation, and why I say it's been so complicated and so hard, is because then I lose everything, right? So I'm out of my home, I am outside of my kids' lives, and I got to start with nothing. So, but hey, yet still here I am, pressing and striving. I've been able to rebuild. It's been hard. I've had some help, from my parents, and I really appreciate it. Hi, mom, dad, if you're watching, love y'all. Thanks a lot for the support. Um, but yeah, here I am, and so far, right, we're still in court. We're almost at the end of it right now. I think we've got one or two more sessions, and basically, I'm just trying to fight for whatever rights I have left. I filed an affidavit, and basically just stating my constitutional rights, in a sense, that I don't want to have any engagement with the state. I want the state outside of my affairs. And so basically, they're trying to make me see my children through some supervision, and I just won't have it, because nah, man, these are games I can start to go into. I'm a good father. I know I'm a good father. I don't need nobody to tell me how to father my children, and no, I just won't
Yeah.
have any of it.
Well, and I know that, you're on the page, I'm on the page, we see the comments. I'm sure some people watching this might just say, suck it up, whatever it takes. But the reality is, and this is to anybody that watches this, you don't want somebody else, not just the government, you don't want some dude coming in and telling you what's best for your kids. You know what's best for your kids. Only you are most equipped to take care of your children in your situation. And so I'm in the same boat with you, man. I was faced with a similar situation, and even police got involved, and it was like, I don't want my kids associating dad with police. Like every time we have to see dad, the police have to be there. Every time we see dad, a therapist has to be there. How did this happen? And I guess that leads into the next question that I might have is, how do you think that we got here? How did we come to this? How did we get ourselves into this situation where you can, I was in a similar situation, and I think I was talking to you the other day about that, where almost identical. My ex got in front of me. She was cussing me out. She was yanking me by the arm. I went back and showed my roommate. My arm was entirely red. She was, you know, she had woken up my kids. My kids heard all of the screaming. I wasn't screaming, but she was. She was getting in front of the door so I couldn't leave. I mean, literally the only difference is maybe the country that we live in, where the state could have pressed charges. I mean, she didn't go to the hospital, but still I could have been in that same situation where, you know, I didn't hit her. In fact, she was the aggressor. She blocked my path. She was in your way. Um, but somehow we're the bad guy and we're supposed to be accountable. We got put out of our houses. how did we get to this point where other people get to decide all of this without even having any objectivity or due process?
Yes, sir. Well, first of all, I want to mention out front that what we are facing is a process that is called the Duluth model. Duluth, Duluth, and I suggest anyone to look up this model. Okay, basically, excuse me. Basically, what this is it's a feminist model that was introduced in Minnesota. Basically, it was created in order to protect battered women. Like women that would really like get hammered. Like
Which happens.
absolutely, absolutely, and like there's nothing like I do not condone ever a man bringing violence on a woman ever. I actually believe you got to be really coward person to actually come down on a woman, you know. But basically, this model, the Duluth model, mind you, it was created, it was brought forward by a feminist, right? So right there, like it's biased against men. But basically, what this model is doing, and you can look it up if you want. I suggest, and I dare anybody to check me out. What this model is about removing the responsibility off a woman, whatever they might have done, and to place it entirely on a man. So that's what this model is all about, right? Being a feminist one. So, anyways, that's one thing I wanted to interject about what's going on. And another thing, the reason I would say how we end up in this mess, I would say, is because a lot of it has to do with, unfortunately, we've been deceived by the system into contracting with this system through a lot of people through marriage license. And then you get that coupled with a birth certificate for your children. What that does is it brings the state as a third party union in your marriage relationship, which they then have the fruit of your union. It becomes their property, such as your children. And
Sure.
they're letting us know that's how it is. Because look at us. How come we can't see our children? Why do we have to go in court processes and fight years on end for our children? That's telling us it's because they're not ours. They're the state's. And I dare you to ask the judge what a ward of the state mean. Ask their judge. They know exactly what's going on. And folks, the mayors, they know what's going on. Your Congress people, they know what's going on. So another thing I will say, the reason why we're in this mess is because we've been contracting with this beast system. And I would suggest if you can do things outside of these contracts and these engagements, you would save yourself a lot of heartaches.
So I guess my understanding or takeaway from what you're saying, what you believe, is just get the government out of
Get
personal
your
affairs
get
ultimately,
your
right?
state outside of your affairs. If you can do that, you've got 50% of the war won. And mind you, I just want to put this out there. My views and my opinion, they're not necessarily the father's right movements, right? So I just want to interject this. I'm just speaking from my own opinion and my beliefs. But yeah, absolutely. Get the state outside of your affairs, then you'll be in control. You'll be able to do things the right way, your way. You're not going to be diminished, and you're
I
simple as that, my
I
friend.
I think that really that comes into a really that tiptoes around a really big conversation for another day. But ultimately, we are relinquishing our rights and freedoms for convenience. I mean, I think that's really the bigger conversation, but we definitely don't have the time for that here and
Dude,
now.
absolutely, absolutely, and I'd be happy to do a follow up with y'all
Yeah,
on that later on for sure, man.
for sure.
But
But
this is
that is
just the tip of the iceberg. right?
Oh, absolutely. But that's something to consider when, like, that's a good point that you bring up. You know, do you own a house? Well, do you pay taxes? Well, what if you pay the house off? Are you still paying taxes? I thought you owned it. How are you still paying for it?
Stop paying taxes and see really who owns the home, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole different conversation. And my views are also my own, but these are good conversations, regardless of if you agree with them or not. It's good. I mean, you gotta talk this stuff out. You gotta be able to have these conversations
I
or you
mean,
won't get anywhere.
the ones that are really into this and are really awoke or want to be awoke, they'll check us out, they'll do their research, they'll do their own due diligence, and they'll see what we're talking about. That's the important thing, man.
So what do you think what do you think is the solution to, I mean, that's got to be a tough answer. What's the solution to all of that? What's the solution in saying, "Hey, government, you don't have the right to decide what my civil union is or my marriage is or what my relationship looks like between my wife and I, my husband and I, my children and I." How do you go about that?
Well, ideally, like I mentioned, the best thing, if you can start off with leaving the government outside of your affairs, that's the ideal. For example, get married under God, right? Like, you don't need to ask the state permission for a wife. Now, mind you, you're going to get benefits doing that, right? Because when you ask permission, you're always going to get some benefits. But,
That's
you
that
know,
convenience.
exactly, exactly. But, a lot of us, we've been duped. We're already into this, right? So we've already got engaged. So here we are. Now, what's the solution to that, right? So let's say a few years down the road, then your wife, or whatever, spouse, they're not happy and they want a separation. Well, what I would say, like, and again, I'm speaking from my own opinion and my own school of thought, is get involved as least as possible. Okay, so basically, I'll use myself as an example, right? So they're asking me, in order for me to see my children, they want me to see them through supervision, and I just won't have none of that, right? So basically, the reason for that is because, first of all, there's never been any complaint about me towards my children. There's never been any documentation about me mistreating my children. I mean, there's no reason other than my spouse, well, my ex, spewing whatever she wants. Like whatever she'll say, that's what's going to be held up against me towards my children. So basically, what I'm saying is, I'm just saying I'm having none of that, right? So I mean, and it's going to come down to, if the state, they want to make it so that my children are never going to be in my life. It's sad to say, as much as I love my children, then so be it. So why am I saying that? Why am I using that as a solution? Well, because first of all, my well-being, my will, my emotions, I cannot spend years and thousands of dollars on a, a game, a system that is already rigged against me. I mean, I already know I'm going to lose. I mean, it's not about when I'm going to lose. It's not about if I'm going to lose. I mean, it's about when, right? So
When and
I
how bad?
exactly. So I'm just not partaking into this, right? And so by me not spending my will, my emotions, my resources, my money into a game that's already rigged against me, I'm saving myself a whole lot of heartache. And worst case scenario, I know my children eventually, they'll have the age, to make their own decisions, and they'll be able to come and see me, and they will know the truth, and the truth will set them free. That's when the healing is going to really begin. Like, would I want to be involved in my children's life right now? Of course I would. But with the testimonies, with I'm reading people, like they're spending so much money and nothing for nothing. Like, to have what, like 30 days out of a year. I think it comes out to like 40 or 50 if you calculate like one weekend every other weekend. You know. And another thing, the reason why I'm saying that why I believe this is a viable solution is because basically what the system wants is that's exactly what they want. Like the courts, the judges, they want somebody to get involved. They want to fight. That's how they're going to make their money. That's how the hours are going to be added to their timetable. And so I believe that if a lot or every man would use this philosophy and would say, you know what, I'm not playing this game. Do whatever you want. She can have the children. What would happen? Well, what would happen is that these judges and these court people, they would say, well, you know what? We're losing a lot of money because these guys are not spending their energy, their money into fighting for these children. So follow the money, right? How do we fix the situation? I guarantee you that if every man would be doing that, these judges would force the man to go back in the children's life because they would say, hopefully, by them being involved in their children's life, that would cause some kind of conflict in the exchange of the children with the spouse or the co-parenting, where these women will drag their ass back to court, you know, because something's going on, and so then the whole game, the process continues. I don't know if I'm making any sense at all in my rambling here.
No, I hear what you're saying. I mean, I hear a few counter arguments rattling around. I mean, one of the first things that I thought is, well, if you just bow out, they lose the money in the fight, then they'll just find a way to charge you more on your child support. Because, for example, I don't see my kids, but I still pay child support. So, they'll find a way. That's the first thing that I think of. But at the same time, I mean, I could also see how, you know, I don't know. It's challenging because, there's a lot of other things at play too. It's like, for example, my ex, she was capitalizing on utility assistance. So like electricity bill, um, EBT or food stamps or food assistance, WIC assistance. She was getting all these benefit programs, and I mean, who pays for that? I mean, that comes out of the government's pocket, which comes out of our pocket. It's like, well, when does it end? So I, I don't know. To me, that's an even bigger question mark.
Oh yeah,
But
I hear you, man. The child
but
support is a tough one. It's really a tough one to get out of, right?
yeah,
Um,
I but what I was going to say was my thinking on all of that. The bigger issue for me is my situation was, you know, the whole contentious situation that was going on in the middle of our fight was really causing a lot of damage to my children in the process. So regardless of how much I was paying out the butt, regardless of how many times I had to sleep in my truck, all of that, like it's really irrelevant at the end of the day because to me, the most important thing is the well-being of my kids.
mhm.
And it didn't matter who was right. It didn't matter who was wrong, who was winning, who was losing. What mattered was, my oldest son was held back a grade and it wasn't looking great for the following year. And same thing for my younger son.
Mhm.
And everything just kind of, it was like just snowballed. And, my kids were suffering regardless of who was right or wrong. And yeah, so I didn't want to be a part of that anymore. Now, I was given an offer. My situation was different. I was given an offer to bow out. Um, but I was already given a temporary order and I was going to lose for sure. I mean, I'm 90% or more sure that I was going to lose. So that's why I said earlier it's not just when you're going to lose, but how much you're going to lose. So I got to decide, well, they're offering to drop the alimony and drop all of these restraining orders and orders for protection and hearing the cops, every other week, I legitimately have PTSD. Like whenever I hear a door knock, I'm states away now. But still, when I hear a knock on my door, I'm terrified because I think it's cops. And I mean, I know maybe it's a little exaggerated, but cops carry guns, and there's not the best track record with police in America. So I can see one thing leading to another, maybe me feeling upset, and one thing leading to another, and boom, I'm dead, and now my wife and daughter don't have someone there in addition to my
Or
kids.
I hear you. Or just having a welfare check, having to do this every time. Like
Yep.
these are the things that I just can't put up with. Like my no, I'm sorry. You know, I don't have the time or the energy. I'm sorry, I just can't do it. And that's one of my approach on that. Right? Is that if my father integrity, if they're telling me I can't be the father that I want to be towards my children and rear them the way I want them to rear and the way I know what's best for them,
Right.
if that state is telling me, well, they're not your children, they're my children, then fine. Handle my children. And eventually, when they're old enough, they'll come and see me and I'll have a relationship with them. That
Right.
to me, it's really the most viable way for me to keep my will, my emotions intact, and just do what I got to do.
Well, and again, that's another thing that I think that I've seen a lot on the father's rights movement and all the various pages is um, there's a lot of I don't know if shaming is the right word, but there's just a lot of never give up, never quit, blah blah blah. But I mean, my question is at what cost? And that goes back to your situation the most. So, hey, just a time out for anybody that's listening to this that's facing a hard situation like this, I'm not telling you to abandon your kids or give up your fight or anything like that, but I am saying that there's still hope. I have hope, and I know you do too, Giovanni. Like at the end of the day, our kids are going to come find us. At the end of the day, it might not be tomorrow, but eventually it'll happen, and they're going to learn the truth. And you know, the other thing I'm thinking too is that you can't for me, my personality, and for the rest of my family, I know I have to take care of me first, or who am I to my family? I can't take care of my wife because I'm remarried. I have a daughter. How am I supposed to take care of them if I can't even handle myself anymore because of the situation going on with my biological kids? That's already affecting them in a negative way. So if you're listening, if you're out there and you hear this, like if that's the decision you decide to make, you're not alone, and there's no shame. There are other guys that have gone through it that have made that decision. Ultimately, you have to live with it. I have to live with the decision that I made every day. Um, so, don't try to derelict that responsibility. You need to own it. Don't blame anybody else. Blame yourself if you're taking that decision. But I personally made that, and I want to extend that out to people that may see this. You're not
And
alone. You got people to
yes, sir.
talk to.
Yes, sir. So we all would fight for you. Right? I mean,
Hey
if you have the
Giovanni,
resource and you
could
have, yes, sir.
could you could you broke up a little bit there? Could you go back?
Sure. I was going to say, and there's nothing wrong for fighting for your kids, also, right? I mean, if you have the time, the resources, that's perfect. Also, all we're saying is that there's a lot of testimonies, and we're just trying to save a lot of heartaches from people that might be a bit, ignorant on how this game is set up. Right? All we're saying is that there's a lot of testimony of people that spent 25 50 thousands that went through it for years on end. And by the time they're finished, their child are old enough to make their own decisions and come and see them anyways. So we're just trying to save a lot of people's, heartache and resources. That's all we're saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, y'all stay encouraged. You know, you know what you got to do. And what I would say is, I know that the fathers' rights movement, the main objective is to get 50-50 shared parenting, right, custody, and that's great. What I'm going to suggest is that this would probably be more achieved more in a sense of speaking to your congressman, to your local public servants, maybe not less in court. You know, like in court, it's not really going to be relevant unless you end up winning your case after, you know, years and thousands of dollars. But that's just something I wanted to interject out there.
So I guess maybe the a final main question I would have is, you know, this has affected us deeply, and we'll never forget about it. And you always want what's best for your kids. And so, you know, personally, what would your advice be to your children? Um, or how would you rear them with this knowledge, with this hurt or pain that you carry? What you personally, what would you advise them as a child?
Well, you know, as I mentioned earlier, I have two daughters, right? Two girls. And what I would try to teach them and show them is in, unfortunately, in this feminist society where they've taught women to stare down, you know, your spouse or your man, and, you know, hold up to him. What I would teach them is just respect your man. You know, respect them before you love them. I mean, it's in today's society, it's so rare to have, you know, just humble, meek, you know, respectful woman. And if you can just make your spouse see that you see them as something greater than you are, you know, I know I'm going against contrary thought because today we've been given and sold a bill of equality and all that stuff. And mind you, I'm a believer, right? I'm a person of the faith. So my school of thought is a bit different, but I'm also speaking from experience. I know how there's power in a woman to build her house just like she can pluck it down with her own hands. And basically, that's what I would teach my children. Just be good, you know, humble, respectful towards your spouse, and it'll do a whole lot of good.
Well, I think there's a lot of value in that. As you know, I'm not a person of faith, but you know, I mean, the golden rule is a solid rule, and you know, do unto others as you'd have them do to you, right? And
Mhm.
I mean, you know, to I would want somebody to treat me, you know, amazing. I would want somebody to I don't know. It should there's a lot of truth to that, and I love my wife. You know, I do hold her higher than me. It's not a man versus woman thing. It's I care about her. And so I care so much. I do for her. And if she doesn't do those things back, that's fine. That's not my expectation because I love her, and I'm not gonna hold her to some expectation that she never agreed to. Um, so yeah, I don't it's some people might hear this and think, "Oh, you know, he's talking about feminism in a negative light and you know, that's not what feminism is about." You know, well, whatever it was about, it ain't about that anymore. I think most all of us men here can attest to that. We're all about equality. That's what this whole movement is about, is saying, "Hey, yeah, we are about equality. Time out." Because some things aren't about equality right now and we know it. Um, but yeah, I don't think that there's anything wrong with you saying, you know, it's just that your children are daughters, so you know, you're saying hold your husband above. But I would tell my boys that same thing. You know, I would say, hey,
Hey,
respect your wife, love
exactly.
her.
If I had boys, you know, I would tell them, you know, like take care of your wife, love her, uphold her, you know, guide her as you are supposed to be the leader of your home. You know, um, just love her and do everything you can to protect and guide your family, right? Which I think is good values.
So some people might not agree with the leader thing, but whatever. That's why that's
I
you and me
understand.
talking. That's you and
Yes,
me
sir.
talking. That's up to them to decide what's right for their home. But I hear you. Um, yeah, man, I think that's great advice, honestly. Um, and and that's good advice that you didn't say, don't be like your mom and do this and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to talk crap about your spouse to be, to give them good advice that helps them prevent what happened to you.
Hey, I could even say don't be like me, right? Like, I mean, I've done mistakes, but I'm not gonna say that because I'm smart, right? So
Well, my advice to my kids would be, um, always stay true to yourself.
mhm.
Don't lie to yourself, and don't try to be somebody or something you're not. That's what got me in my relationship with my ex, was trying to be someone I wasn't, and I was a fraud to myself before anyone else. So I take just as much responsibility in my failed marriage, just because, you know what? I wasn't true to myself. So how could I have been true to her? That doesn't negate what she has done after that, but you know, you got to take ownership of yourself.
Yeah,
So
man. And
that's
it all comes out. It all ends up being it's for the children, right? It's the next generation. So hopefully, ideally, to me, in the best world is that this society it will realize, like the downfalls where we're falling short, and we'll just correct it, and we'll change the course of action so that hopefully these next, generation, the children, they just end up avoiding all the heartaches we have, because that's what you want to do. You want to make them avoid all the our pitfalls so that they don't end up having all the heartaches and the suffering that we had, right?
that's what
Yeah,
it's all about, brother.
yeah, man.
Well, this has been good. I guess we'll wrap it up. But man, this has been good, and I really appreciate you taking the time to share your experience, share your thoughts, and hopefully we do this more.
Hey, I appreciate you having me, man. It was fun, bro. Thanks a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah, man. And you guys, whoever watches this all the way through, um, let us know what you thought. Let us know what you want to hear. If you have any questions for us, personal, maybe personal questions, let us know. Give us a shout. Tell us if we should keep doing these sorts of things.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, this has been good. So I guess we'll sign off and take care.
All right, bro. Cheers. Talk to you later.